Welcome to Sinful's Horror Stories. Sit back, relax, stay sinful. Number 1. My name is Julie, and this story happened 4 years ago when I was age 17. I did some babysitting as a part-time job while I was going to school. One night I had to babysit a little boy named Nigel who was 2 years old. Their parents would be gone until around 11 p.m. I got to the house around 4 p.m. and the parents gave me instructions on what to do, where everything is, and then they left for the evening. I played with Nigel for a few hours, fed him dinner, and then put him to sleep around 6:40 p.m. As I laid Nigel down in his crib, I turned around and was slightly startled when I saw a ventriloquist dummy that sat on a box of toys. It creeped me out at first because it was like it was looking right at me, but I just quietly laughed to myself and turned the dummy's head to face the wall. I then pulled the bedroom door slightly ajar and headed downstairs. About 15 minutes go by and I heard a bang come from upstairs. It sounded like something fell on the floor. I headed upstairs to check on Nigel. He was awake, standing in his crib. I picked him up and cradled him until he fell back to sleep. As I was doing so, I noticed something. The ventriloquist dummy's head was facing back in the same direction as before. I was thinking to myself, that's odd. I swear I turned its head. I put Nigel back in his crib after he fell asleep in my arms. I went back downstairs and continued to watch TV. After 20 minutes, there was another bang coming from upstairs, this time saying to myself, what is that? I headed upstairs to have a look around and check on Nigel. He was still asleep. I couldn't see anything that had fallen on the floor. I just couldn't work out what was making that sound. I left the room and pulled the door ajar. As I was walking downstairs, I heard a door close. I stopped and turned around and walked up the few steps and saw that Nigel's door has been closed shut. It must have been the wind or the doors loose or something, I thought. I opened the bedroom door so it was slightly ajar once more. The same thing happened again. The door closed as soon as I started heading downstairs. This time I opened the door and placed a toy in front of it just so it couldn't close. After that, I headed downstairs to make myself some popcorn and carried on watching TV. About an hour or so passed when I headed upstairs to use the bathroom. As I was in the bathroom using the toilet, I heard another banging sound. The bathroom was opposite Nigel's room, and as soon as I opened the door, I froze in fear when I saw 2 eyes peering through the door staring at me. For a second, I thought it was someone, but after looking more closely, it was just the ventriloquist dummy. I thought it must have fallen over. I picked up the dummy and moved it to a different room in the airing cupboard to be exact. I checked on Nigel to see him still sleeping. The rest of the evening was fine with no more sounds. The parents arrived a little earlier than expected at 10:15 p.m. They asked me how everything was, and I told them it was fine except I heard banging noises from upstairs. They said it might just be the boiler, because it can make noises like that sometimes. They then paid me for the night and I was about to head out, when I said, I put that dummy in the airing cupboard, by the way. It was creeping me out a little. The parents then looked at each other in a confused way and said, what dummy? I replied, you know the ventriloquist dummy, the one in Nigel's room. The next words they said made me shiver with goosebumps. We don't have a ventriloquist dummy. I said to them, I'm certain they do. I asked them to let me show them, so we went back upstairs and I opened the door. We saw nothing. It was empty. I was so confused. I then went to Nigel's room and the dummy wasn't there either. But Nigel was awake standing up, and the bedroom window was wide open. I have no idea on what happened that night, or even how to explain it to anyone. I never babysat again after that. Number 2. About 6 years ago, some friends and I were having a few drinks at a local bar we used to frequent. After about an hour or so, I noticed a woman continually glancing in my direction. She was staring at me as if nobody else was around. About 3 or 4 drinks in, I made my way for the bathroom. On my way back, I noticed she was now sitting next to my seat at the bar. Of course, like any other young male, I thought, cool, here's my chance to score. We started talking, but before I could take a sip of my drink, a friend of mine pulled me off to the side. He told me to take notice of the bottom of my drink and that it was fizzing. Sure enough, I could see what it looked like, the remnants of a pill dissolving. When I sat back down, I asked her if she wouldn't mind holding my seat while I used the bathroom once more. I took the drink with me this time and poured it down the toilet. I then looked into the mirror and said, "It's showtime." I stumbled my way back to the bar and asked her if she wouldn't mind giving me a ride home. Little did she know I had phoned the police on my way out of the bathroom and gave them her complete description. After about 5 minutes in her car, I could see the red and blue lights behind us. Once the officer got her out of the car, he emptied her purse and found a bag filled to the brim with roofies. As she was being taken away, I shot her a goodbye kiss, the middle finger, and shouted, "You gave it a good old college try. I'll give you that." Story number 3. I lived in the wonderful city of Newport News, Virginia. Anyone that lives here or has lived here knows that was sarcastic. It's pretty crazy here at times, and you see a lot of crazy things. When I was in high school, the thing to do on a Saturday night was to go looking for trouble in the neighboring Yorktown and Williamsburg. One place in particular was Crawford Road. It is steeped in a local lore, being so close to the battlefields, as well as back in the day the KKK used to hold rallies and meetings in the woods, and some say they hanged people from that bridge. I grew up hearing stories, reading the lore, and trying to find validity in what I read. I had been quite a few times in my youth with my friends, and never really experienced anything other than the odd noises here and there. People always warned me that it was dangerous to go search alone at night, but hell, I was invincible, right? One night in my 20-somethings, I decided to take some pictures of the bridge on Crawford Road. I couldn't find anyone who was willing or up to go, so I decided to go alone. I packed up my Canon and was on my way at 2:30 in the morning. I turned from Yorktown Road onto the famed Crawford Road, and my Honda was running like a champ. I was blasting my music and I was good to go, not a care in the world. I get to the bridge and turn off the lights. I wanted to get some unique pictures, so I set up the camera and was deflecting the flash. I had turned off the car and the headlights to make some cool lighting shots. If anyone has been there, you know when you turn your headlights off. I can't stress this enough. It's pitch black. I left the keys in the ignition and the window down as a precaution, since I wasn't going to be far from the car in case I needed to dive in and haul ass. Well, in a few minutes, that's exactly what I had to do. Taking some cool pictures and getting into my photo groove, I heard footsteps to my right, far between the trees. I don't spook easily, so I just started to calmly pack up the camera. At that point, I had rested it on the ground for lower shots, and I started going back to my car. The footsteps grew louder before I got to the back of the car. It was almost as if they were right behind me. I could also hear what sounded like a bike of some sort. Well, needless to say, I dove into my car. I somehow managed to get into the back seat straight. Not sure how, it's still a blur. I rolled up the window with the quickness, just as I noticed the shape of a person not behind me, but in front of the car. I started the car and hit the lights to illuminate what was presumably a homeless man with a bike, not a foot from my bumper, coming around to the driver's side. I put it in drive and hauled ass as he approached with his scary Hannibal Lecter stare. I looked in the rear view as I was speeding off, and the taillights illuminated what I could see as getting on the bike. To chase me? I don't know. I wasn't going to stick around and see. I learned my lesson from this experience. You are not invincible, no matter how much you want to be. Listen to people when they tell you not to go anywhere alone at night. As a 5-foot-tall woman, that could have been my undoing. I've been many times since, but in the daytime, and with other people. Creepy homeless man, let's not meet again. Please. Thank you for watching. Please be sure to leave a like, comment, share, and subscribe for more content. I have a bonus story from GrimTale Bros for you. I'm going to end the video off with my regular spiel, and then that story will follow. So you know what to do. Stay sinful.
There is an infamous haunted house in Honolulu, Hawaii, that the locals call Kaimuki House. Some people call it Hawaii's Amityville Horror. In the summer of 1942, the house was occupied by a single mother and her 3 children. One night, the police were called to her house. They found a hysterical woman in the front yard screaming.
She's trying to kill my children.
When they entered the house, the police officers stumbled onto a scene that they would never forget. The 3 children were being thrown around the room by an invisible force. The officers watched for over an hour, unable to do anything, as the children were beaten and strangled by the unseen entity. The incident was on the front page of the local newspaper headlines for several days. Years later, 3 girls were sharing the house. One night, they started to hear strange noises. It sounded like someone was moving around and talking. One of the girls felt an invisible hand on her arm. They called the police. When an officer arrived, he found the 3 girls standing outside the house with a look of sheer terror on their faces. The girls decided to go and stay with one of their mothers, and the policeman decided to follow them to make sure nothing happened. However, on the way, the police officer saw the girl's car pull over into a parking lot. The girl in the front seat was struggling with something invisible that was trying to strangle her. When the policeman jumped out of his car and tried to rescue the girls, he felt a strong, calloused hand grab his arm and twist it. Suddenly, the door of the vehicle flew open and the girl was thrown out onto the road. She was clawing at her throat as if someone was choking her. They were unable to do anything to stop the attack and were forced to watch as a woman was strangled to death. In 1977, a Japanese couple moved into the haunted house in Kaimuki. They didn't know anything about its history. On their first night in the place, the wife woke up at midnight because the bedroom was very cold. When she looked around, she was horrified to see a ghostly white figure floating in mid-air. It was a woman with no arms or legs. When the wife tried to wake her husband, the figure disappeared. The next day, the couple were so disturbed by the apparition that they contacted a priest. He advised them to make offerings of bread and water to the spirit every night. He said it was a kasha, a Japanese demon, caused by some horrible murders that had occurred in the house years before. After repeating the ceremony every night for a week, the couple never saw the horrific spirit in the house again. These stories are just the tip of the iceberg. They say the cause of the hauntings was a series of terrible murders. Many years before, a Japanese immigrant lived in the house with his wife and 2 children. Apparently, the husband killed his wife, his son, and his daughter. He chopped up the bodies and hid them on the property. The police discovered the corpse of the wife and son buried in the garden, but the daughter's body was never found. They say her corpse is still hidden somewhere in the house. After that, the house was abandoned for many years. Later, there were 2 women who lived in the house. One of the women fell in love with a man. There was some type of love triangle, and they say the man was driven mad by jealousy. He murdered both of the women and then committed suicide in the house. The bodies of the 3 people were found inside the home after a few days. It is believed that these horrible murders created a kasha, a Japanese demon created by a grudge or extreme anger after a shocking murder. Today, villagers still tell stories of the terrifying occurrences, and many books and newspaper articles have been written detailing the haunting in Kaimuki House.